The Happy Warrior Podcast. Conservative commentary on the news of the day from a more positive perspective.
Hello again and welcome everyone. This is the Happy Warrior Podcast with your host, Happy Warrior Pete. That is me, the Peter Pischke. I'm glad to be here with all of you today. Thank you for taking time out of your day or night to listen to me. If you're out in Minneapolis or the upper Midwest and, you're in the minus 60 degree cold, I hope my words may keep you warm. Don't get too cold. Be sure to put on your coats and your socks and your shoes and try to get through the weather. I hear that's supposed to be, here in the Sioux Falls area, it's going to be minus 50-something with wind chill, minus 20-something actual on Wednesday. That's just crazy. That is really, really cold. So I hope you can keep warm. Before we get going, just like to remind all of you that we are on Facebook a lot and Twitter a lot. Facebook is like Happy Warrior Pete and Twitter is Happy Warrior P. We just got an Instagram account going. And we have a YouTube channel, which is just Happy Warrior. Working out the kinks with that. We'll get more YouTube videos out. Just trying to figure a good way to balance the schedule with my health. I'm seeing a pain specialist this week. So if you're a religious person, if you pray for me that would go well, I'd appreciate it. All right, so now we got all that good stuff out of the way. I'd like to start today with a segment about the state of the U.S. media and Western journalism in general. As I have mentioned before, I have a master's in journalism. I have a bachelor's in science and journalism from SDSU. I tried to treat this podcast like a journalistic enterprise. That's why I put so much work out. I put 10, 20 hours sometimes putting together these episodes. And my producer was like, look, Peter, you got to cut the links. You got to reduce the linkage. And I was like, yeah, I know I need to make the podcast more concise, and I need to make it easier. I need to make sure, my content is more original, more my own than just quoting other people. But I also really feel strongly that I want this to give you the biggest, the clearest, the best bird's eye view on these subjects that I cover. I want you to be able to understand it. I want you to see the facts that are pro and con for this idea. I really want to do a good job, the way that journalists should. But you should know, I don't receive any revenue from this. In fact, many people who have fairly popular podcasts make very little money doing it. A big problem with that is just there's so many podcasts out right now. But journalism in general is on the cheap, and that's a big problem. And so today's first segment is about how cheap journalism meets ugly populism, and how these two things combine to create some of the worst media stories this year and last. Of course, the one that I would go to that all of you probably are thinking of is the Covington kids scandal. Covington Catholic School in Covington, Kentucky, I think. Anyhow, yeah, it's the city of Covington. Let me put it this way. This is a fantastic... Someone shared this with me. This is from the book 1984. This is Orwell. I'll just read it. This is fascinating. It was terribly dangerous to let your thoughts wander when you were in any public place or within range of a telescreen. The smallest thing could give you away. A nervous tic, an unconscious look of anxiety, a habit of muttering to yourself. Anything that carried with it the suggestion of abnormality, of having something to hide. In any case, to wear an improper expression on your face, incredulity when a victory was announced, for instance, was itself a punishable offense. There was even a word for it. In newspeak, face crime, it was called. And wow, that is incredibly insightful. And I got this clip from a National Review article by College Smith, and he included this other segment. This was an actual article about the Covington Catholic kids scandal. If you don't know what the Covington Catholic kids scandal is, and I covered it in my last episode, you're living under a rock. But basically, the gist was the media went crazy over a PSYOP story that was pushed by an anonymous Twitter account. Really behind it was the Black Hebrew Israelites, and it was just this no-nonsense story that should never existed, where it was a bunch of MAGA kids supposedly terrorized this old Native American man who was just doing his own thing and banging his drum. When in fact, when more videos came out, it turned out the opposite was true. It was the black Hebrew Israelites and the Native American man, Nathan Phillips, who accosted the MAGA kids. Yes, the MAGA kids were a little bit unruly, but they weren't as near as bad as the other groups. I mean, the black Israelites were shouting every known expletive and derogatory statement you could make. Very politically incorrect. Nathan Phillips has gone across the last 2 weeks. Well, yeah, how long has it been? A week? Almost, yeah, a week. Over the last week, Nathan Phillips has smeared these kids in every which way. He's lied about his war record. I mean, on and on and on. It's a gigantic mess. But Nathan Phillips, nor the MAGA kids, nor even the black Hebrew Israelites are to blame for this story. This should never have been a news story. Instead, it's the gatekeepers who screwed this up. It's the people who should be vetting the news and deciding what is real and what is, I hate to use this term, quote, fake news, unquote. And it got really bad. The media is the one that screwed this up. They really did. This should put a shame to journalism everywhere. And journalists, if you're listening, you need to reorganize your organizations to be wary of things like this. This is what editors used to do, by the way. And I'll go more into this. But here's an example. This was Ruth Graham of Slate. This is what she said of Nick Sandmann from that initial picture. But I think the real reason the clip is spread is simpler. It's the kid's face. The face of self-satisfaction and certitude, of edginess expressed as cruelty. The face remains almost completely still as his peers hoot in awed delight at his bravado. The face is both punchable and untouchable. The counter sit-in in Virginia in the 1960s, and many more images of jeering white men from that era. Anyone who knew the popular white boys in school recognized it. The confident gaze, the eyes twinkling with menace, the smirk. And it's just ridiculous. And that was a legit article, and that was far from the only one. There are many articles that went on and on and on about how these kids were stand-ins for their high school bullies and how they stood for white privilege and all the evils of mankind and all men especially. They're the most evil white men of a long line of white men doing evil and mean things and being jerks. Okay? And it was that, and it was the MAGA hat. You know, someone wrote the MAGA hat. This was Alyssa Milano said the MAGA hat is the new KKK hood. Just garbage, ridiculousness, trash. Just insane. I can't believe it's 2019 and there are news articles that come out that say things like this. But they are all freaking all over the place. I mean, you couldn't hide, some of the articles. Here's a list. This is from the Daily Wire. They put together a list. It was by Ash Show, and it was so great. She opens it up and say, I woke today to check notes. Day 6, so it should have been a never story to begin with. And yet, here are all the articles that were still coming out. This was on Thursday. Here are the articles that are still coming out as of last Thursday. New York Times, Hebrew Israelites see divine intervention in Lincoln Memorial confrontation. NBC, Nick Sandmann, a student at Covington Catholic, says he was a silent bystander in viral video, but his MAGA hat spoke for him. NBC again, how the Covington Catholic boys were redeemed by the dark magic of crisis communications. Washington Post, the face-off between Catholic school teens and Native American elders, a reminder of 500 years of conflict. And it just goes on and on and on, and just, it's hard to believe. It's hard to believe that all these journalists, these people who are supposed to be apolitical of their job, or at least that's what the standard used to be, are completely political. How now the news media is essentially the apparatchik for the Democrat Party. It's insane, because this is not a good way if journalists want to, stay relevant. If journalists are just going to use Twitter like any old person and just write stories based on hot takes, then their journalism and their work is not worth any more than their rando on Twitter. It really isn't. If you're a journalist, you're supposed to be doing work that the normal person just can't. You have the time, the resources, the energy, the schooling, the education. You are supposed to be able to understand the world and create news stories based on real hard evidence and facts that just the normal person can't get easily to. There's a local blog, a political blog in my area called South Dakota. And though, it's the guy that does it, a printer, Scott Arisman, a kind of friend of mine. I like Scott. He does blogging on the site, and he is, next to our local newspaper, is the best source of information about what is happening in local politics here in Sioux Falls. But he doesn't get paid for that. That is just something he works the effort to. And there are lots of non-paid journalists like him doing the job that journalism used to do. And I wanted to know, it's like, why was this story so addictive? Why is it that journalists, even today, I just read some new ones today, why can't journalists walk away from this story? And it's this thing about where journalism, because it's now a political thing, because it's not just about try to at least look like you're unbiased and try to get to the truth. There's an incentive now to be political and to make the political heads and the celebrities happy with you, and that'll be good for your career. That'll be good for your bottom line. And it makes things like facts turn to something else. And this was a fantastic Jonah Goldberg, who is my hero, and I've talked about him a bunch of times. He says, this was his take. He says, and this goes back to Kavanaugh, the most common explanation, the hot take so hot it melted the conventional wisdom and forged a new concrete groupthink, is that Kavanaugh was so angry because he represents white male entitlement. The white male explanation is a form of allegory, not argument. In allegories, the characters aren't real people, so much as metaphors for certain ideas. For instance, in Pilgrim's Promise, the main character is named Christian. On his trek, he encounters other abstractions of human form, such as Mr. Worldly Wise Man. Kavanaugh is now Mr. White Male Entitlement, and as such, he is by definition wrong, because that is his assigned role. And that's it, perfectly. The kids, that's the whole thing. News, hard news, political news, now is less often about facts and more often about the allegorical cultural value of the story. Okay, it's about, when we say it's about the narrative, it's about, what we say is happening. But narratives belong in fiction. And if they're in nonfiction, they have to have freaky, strong, good evidence. Narratives that they're like here, if a fact gets in the way, the narrative's more important. And he's like, yeah. And there's a split, what is it called? I want to say Split Glass or something, Broken Glass. Anyhow, it's a movie about the New Republic, and how in this movie, and it's based on a true story, this editor at the New Republic would just create stories out of nowhere. And the whole room would go along with it. And it was this idea that they just kind of trusted the guy, and he was really nice. And we already kind of believed that these things existed. And he made up stories. The big story that the conservatives know, and he said that people at CPAC were part of these rape gangs, not too dissimilar to the Kavanaugh story. And he found out that it was it came out, it was a big scandal. They made a movie about it with Peter Skarsgård, who's awesome. And it's a thing. But the reason why it got away was because they already believed these narratives exist. The journalists that cover these stories believe in these narratives. And though you think journalists should be better, today they often aren't. And so that part of them that says, well, reason before feeling, that part of them that says, we look at the facts, put the facts first, even when they disagree with what I believe, that gets pushed to the wayside. That's part of the ugly populist part of journalism today. But the other reason why we get stories like this that are essentially narratives and allegories instead of hard truth and evidence is because there is not an incentive in journalism right now to be a good truth teller. It's actually better that you get more page clicks, more Twitter likes, and retweets. And this is a problem. So one of the problems is, 20 years ago in journalism, there were editors, and there were loads of them. In every organization, there were a bunch of editors. Like, yes, you had a lot of reporters, but you also had a lot of editors. And every piece that journalists could put out could receive more time to double-check the facts and make sure everything was on the up and up. But now that we've reduced the role of the journalist to basically having to fact-check your own story, and then the editor they check big stories, and editors do try their best, but they're so few in number compared to the journalists, and we have less journalists right now than ever. And I'll get more into that about like BuzzFeed and HuffPo just had big firings. And so there's no incentive. There's that first part to be telling the truth because you just don't have the time for it. I'll find the book later, but it talks about this, how online news media in particular, there's no incentive to do a good job on a news story because you're paid by how many stories you put out and how many likes those stories get. Now, the Washington Post editorial board is awesome because they do keep these stats up, but they have a rule saying do not look at how well your news story does. Don't find out how many likes, how many page clicks your news story got. But many journalist organizations do not do this, and they live and die by the algorithm. Even if the journalists don't, their bosses do. And so journalists like myself are stuck. We're stuck. So we have to get these stories out. So a hot take comes out, you just buy the photo thing, you just type it up real quick, and you throw it out there into the internet, and there it exists. Now, once they made that mistake, they should have turned back. Some did. There was the New York Times had to walk it back, sort of. There was some people from the Atlantic and Slate I read that walked it back, but many did not. In fact, on the whole, what used to be called the Gawker Network, I couldn't find one writer, one reporter that apologized for screwing up the story. And it's, when you want to say insane, like this was back, it says, well, here's one from The Root. President both sides proves once again he's a white nationalist who enables racists. Oh, and they just cannot admit. They just cannot admit that they screwed up the story. They just can't do it. And it's sad. It really is sad. Because I love journalism. I want journalism to be successful. I want journalism to have a future in the United States. And just doing a crappy job, and when people that do the job for free sometimes just do as well or better, it leaves us in a very bad place. I'm going to jump to another story that did this. This is Kevin Williamson, another great writer. I've talked about him before. He says, we should look at this almost as if it's a kind of a Catholic Christian story. Not that they're Catholics in it, but how the story is. He says, the story that was presented about the Covington students turned out to be a fabrication, but even in the face of what the New York Times antiseptically described as the fuller picture that emerged, progressives insisted that the children must be punished for the sins of the white men, going back to the first uptight specimen of H. pallidus to emerge from the Caucasus in the Brooks Brothers loincloth. And he's got it perfectly right. They committed the original sin. And this is the problem. This is the other problem, the ugly politics part. So journalism was one of the problems. There's no incentive to be a fact finder. There's little incentive to come back and fix something. The other problem, the other thing that makes stories like Covington Catholic and stories even like Kavanaugh and anything in between is the ugly populism side. And the ugly populism side is the fact that families and religion have less power in the United States of America today than they ever had before. And for very many people, politics is the new religion. Politics and family used to give you your meaning. When a person lived a life and they wanted to feel like they were doing a job, if they had goals, what life meant, that came from your religion and your family, or both. We've removed that from so many people's lives that they have to replace it for something. Nature abhors a vacuum. So what are you going to fill it with? Well, a lot of people do video games, or some people do another hobby like sports. But by and large, I think people are turning to politics. And this is a problem on the left, probably more so than the right, but it's still on the right. I say more so because on the right, we still hold religious values and morals, and we encourage people to get involved with that. Where on the left, they're not telling people to join a religion. And that's why we get this groupthink. We get groupthink where we treat white privilege as the original sin, where we put levels of what a person is worth based on their skin color, their ethnicity. You could call intersectionality the church of intersectionality, change very little of the language. It has rules and commandments, and there you go. There you go. That is the ugly part. The ugly part is populism, and that because politics has replaced religion, a lot of the rules that were in religion, psychologically, morally, mentally, switched over to politics. We have liturgy. There are things that you have to say, and there is original sin. I mentioned that now. Where you have white privilege, and there's ways that you can repent. If you have money, you have to donate to a certain cause. You have to put another person above you or something, or you have to sacrifice position. You have to do something, right, to make the people on the left happy. You have to admit to your sins. I'm a white man. I'm awful. Every other people is better. Blah 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 blah. That's kind of where we're at now. So it was this mix of cheap journalism, not because necessarily journalists are lazy, but because the incentives that are in place today make journalists have to do hot takes and not fix. And that combined with the ugly populism side, that people have less value in family and religion, and they take where they would have put those values into something else, and it's often politics. And so people, when they have a narrative, when they have an idea, an allegories, by the way, what are they often found in? They're found in religion, they're found in the Bible, they're found in the Talmud, and on and on. They are not doing that for politics. So it doesn't matter how many times you tell them on Facebook, the story was a big sack of crap. It was wrong. This should have never been a story in the first place. There are some people in my area, and I'm hesitant to say their names because I don't want to get in legal trouble. But these are people that ran for city council. These are people that run for school board. These are people that have a fair amount of authority in my community, that would post online about how awful these kids were, would try to dox them. He's like, look, here's the phone number of the school, and here's who you can contact, and we need to make those kids pay. People that I would normally respect lost their frickin' heads. They lost it. They lost their heads. It rolled down their shoulders. It rolled off their shoulders, down their back, over their behind, and on the floor. And then it got trampled by a pack or a herd of hippos or something. I mean, people who generally do awesome and good things lost it. And it's insane that people that would be the first in line of, we have to help people with AIDS. The first in line that would say, let's help people who have mental problems, need special education. Those kind of people, the left activists type, they were the first in line to attack these kids is insane. And it is dangerous. And this is why I point out the combination of cheap journalism and the combination of ugly populism together will create more and more stories like Covington. And the closer we get to 2020, the worse and worse it will get. This story is why, if these two elements do not change, if journalists do not reorganize themselves to more effort on fact-checking, they will do what they did at Covington. If they cannot admit they screwed this up big time, we will get more stories like Covington. And on the other side, culturally, as a culture, if we do not bring people back to families, if we do not raise people to put reason over feeling, if we do not have people taking the values and meaning of life out of real things, then we are going to get more stories like Covington. And it's only going to get worse. This is not the worst it's going to get. This is why Tim Pool of the Timcast, a very, very popular YouTube channel, basically said, look, this is going to lead to civil war. We are on the path to civil war, and I have a hard time saying no to that. And what's the most frustrating thing about that is, if we are headed to the path of civil war, it is over the dumbest crap to have a civil war ever. I mean, we can't. This is kind of like our Harper's Ferry, but we're in the Harper's Ferry where they killed people to free slaves. We just killed each other because there was someone on Twitter that said something we didn't like, and it was really mean, man. It was really mean. I didn't like it. I mean, it's like when Sumner, who was a senator in the 1850s, right before the Civil War happened, he was giving a speech on slavery, and one of the Southern senators came down and almost beat him to death with his cane. And all the South and half the people in the Senate cheered this. When that cane was broken, they divided it and they created tokens and trinkets and rings out of it and wore them proudly. And I think that's what this story is. I really, really do. It's scary. I really am bothered by this. I love this country. I really do. I love journalism. I love truth-finding and philosophy and discussing of ideas. I love encouraging people to be the best they can be. This story is scary. It is scary in that sense that we are right now living in revolution-like times. That we are living in a miasma. And we are living in an environment where revolutionary kind of stuff gets said and done. We have to back this ship up. We have to turn this boat around and get off this path we're on. It is very, very dangerous. Here's the last thing I want to end with. I just want to end with, we'll do 3 things. 3 things on this subject, and then we'll move on. So thing number 1, you want to know how bad it is. I want you to look at 1983, and I want you to look at today. In 1983, 50 companies controlled 90% of the American media. Today, that is 6. 6. CBS, MTV, BET, Disney, Time Warner, NBC, and Sony. I think I got it right. Yeah, so what is it? National Amusement 1, Disney 2, Time Warner 3, Comcast 4, 21st Century News Corp 5, and Sony 6. So there you go, 6. 50 companies versus 6. Part 2. This story has another side to it that I don't know a lot about, so I couldn't get more into it. But this has a big privacy issue. So generally the law is if you're a normal person, you can't have 1,000 articles written about how horrible you are. You can fight back with libel. But what about stories where it's not a celebrity, and it's somewhere in this middle line between the common man and a celebrity? What is it? And it's also this idea of, do you own your face? We're talking about deep fakes that are going to become a thing, and we deep fakes in video and later audio, where it's hard, and you won't be able to tell the difference between if something is real or fake when you look at it or hear it. How does that apply also to the story like Covington, where everyone was talking about his face in the picture? Last thing. My proof for why journalism will get worse. After the Covington story came out, and before that, there was a big story about how Karen Pence was teaching at a Christian school. Similar thing. And it was a no big deal because loads of schools have rules about what you can and can't do if you want to go to that school. Religious schools have a history in America going back to before the founding of the nation. It was again another no story. It was a little bit more newsworthy than Covington, but not much. And of course, they went everywhere. Well, then the New York Times announced last Friday? Yeah, last Friday, with hashtag expose Christian schools. The newspaper asked, it was reporter Dan Levitt, who on Thursday asked, quote, "I'm a New York Times reporter writing about hashtag expose Christian schools. Are you in your 20s or younger who went to a Christian school? I'd like to hear about your experience and its impact on your life. Please DM me." That's direct message. Of course, everyone then on the people were just coming out like, "What the heck is wrong with you?" And here's the thing. This is my proof. And there was another story that came out from Pictorial, which is part of the Gizmodo network, the deep ties between the Catholic anti-abortion movement and racial segregation. It's this idea where the narrative is more important and push facts aside. This is kind of what was going on in the yellow journalism days that we all learn about in journalism school with the Hearst publishing and whatnot. They kind of say that's how we got into the Spanish-American War. We're kind of going back to that with journalism. But the problem with that is back in the journalism days, families by and large, and religion was the building blocks of American society, and that's gone. And so this is why I'm worried for the future. I really am. I hope that we can turn this around. This is the sad part of the Happy Warrior podcast and journalism in general. We don't always have solutions to these problems. It's easy to destroy, right? It's easy to destroy religion and families and those societal underpinnings. But it's really hard to grow and build them up again, isn't it? LBJ, he was awesome at destroying the black family. But we have still, even to this day, almost 60-some years later, don't know how to fix that. And that's kind of the problem. I don't know how we're going to turn this around. I hope we do. Please, when this story comes up, tell the facts. When this story comes up saying, look, this is an example of people losing their heads, and we need to be better about this. Is the news controlling us, or are we controlling the news? If you're a journalist, and this is my last thing I'll say here. If you're a journalist, you need to ask yourself, does what's going on in the news right now control what I write? Or do I write and control what's going on? And I know that kind of sounds a little weird, but I'm saying is you need to try to tell the truth and not just go with the flow. Don't try to make stories that'll make you look good in the press in the media. Please tell the truth. Tell the truth, especially when it hurts your belief. I'm a conservative, and I can admit when we screw things up. I'm a conservative, I'm a registered Republican, and I am the first one to tell you when a Republican does something that is unconservative and away from the Constitution. And journalists need to have this same idea. You need to tell yourselves when journalists get away from journalistic practice, when we move away from reason and we move towards feeling, when we back away from facts and we move towards narrative, journalists need to be the first ones in line to say, whoa, slow down there. Slow down. We're journalists. We are better.
What's on? House blown, dreaming what's wrong, and time's you rolling on, and parties beat goes on. Don't tell me what you want. Don't tell me what you need. Don't tell me what you want. Don't tell me what you need. No more. No more.
All right, well, we are back. Sorry about all that hard, sad news. Oh, all that tiff-toff. Oh, I had to get through it, guys. I'm sorry. You know what is also hard? Not being able to love your hedgehog. Yes, hedgehogs. Those very cute little. Are they rodents? I don't know. They're very cute with their little quills and their spines. I kind of want a pet hedgehog right now. Just a little bit. There's Sonic the Hedgehog, but he's not very cute. He's going to get an awful live-action movie. But let's talk about the real hedgehogs, because the CDC, again, is here to the rescue, people. The CDC, if you remember, warned us about putting costumes on chickens. That was the CDC. The CDC, what else? I should have made a list now of all the stupid things the CDC has warned us about. Well, they are here again. They are, again, proving that they are so worthwhile to keep around. Here's the story from Gizmodo. CDC warns against kissing, snuggling pet hedgehogs amid salmonella outbreak. Yes. That's right. They say if you try to get in contact with these prickly critters, you shouldn't be cuddling or smooching your pet hedgehog, as hard as that may be. They say 11 people across 8 states have fallen ill after coming into contact with a pet hedgehog, just one, with one individual reportedly hospitalized. No, people have died. What is this? No one's even died. Why are we telling them? People with weak immune systems can be especially susceptible to potentially serious side effects. This was the BBC World Daily. It's ridiculous. Oh, one of them was Minnesota. Okay, that's near here. Yeah. One was Wyoming. I love Wyoming. That's my second home. South Dakota's my first home, and then Wyoming is my second. I love Wyoming. All right. Well, next is, and I shared this with Robert, and we love this story. It's so funny. This is, by the way, if you live in Saskatchewan, I want you to know that the Saskatchewan PD, they are using your money. They're using their resources very wisely. They're using them so well. This is almost as good as chicken costumes. Here's the story from the National Post. Saskatchewan launches 16-month undercover sting to catch First Nations man. Oh, I'm glad they used the politically correct term. First Nations man illegally selling $90 worth of fish. Yes. A conservation officer from, I'm reading the first paragraph. Conservation officer from Saskatchewan's Ministry of Environment staged an undercover investigation that has been used to prove a Cree First Nations man illegally sold fish that he retrieved from a lake by his home. In the end, the sting operation caught the man, earning all of $90. Oh my gosh. It's ridiculous. The undercover conservation officer took an interest in iron when he learned, that's the name of the guy, when he learned the ministry had received persistent complaints about him since 1997. The sale of fish without license is prohibited in Saskatchewan, and the court heard the commercial fishery at Canoe Lakes is barred from catching more than 5,000 kilograms of fish each year, less than 1/10 of what the limit used to be. And here's what the lawyer, the Iron's defense lawyer, said that that Iron is illiterate, He has financial straits. What does that mean? He doesn't have money? Straits? That's an interesting way to... Canadian newspapers, people. To induce him to commit an offense. The judge, of course, agreed and decided to take the minister's undercover operation was warranted. Yes, that was so warranted. They paid the guy over the course of 16 months to do an undercover investigation, a guy that was just fishing without a license. I mean... That's just crazy. I hate that, by the way. That is the dumbest thing. Fishing licenses, they're part of forestry policy. Well, there's a couple reasons. One is a way for the government to make money. The second reason is it's a forestry policy to help control people don't use up too much resources of the natural resources of fish. Although most fishing places they're stocked. They're stocked lakes and rivers and whatnot. So whatever. But anyhow. I don't like fishing licenses. That's the story. I had a friend that, he tried to get in the Army, and for the longest time, he could not get in the Army because he once got caught fishing without a license, and that was on his criminal record, and it took them forever. They had to move heaven and earth to get him to be allowed in the Army. It was just ridiculous. But there you go. All right, well, let's move on. This is a positive story. This isn't a funny story. This is a positive story. Technology is the great hope of the future in so many ways, and this is another one. From The Independent, genetically modified chickens lay eggs with cancer-killing chemicals inside. Scientists say a proof-of-concept study could set stage for cheaper production of useful proteins to fight disease. Some of you may or may not know that they already use chickens to make vaccines. There are many vaccines like I want to say like your influenza shot that they use chicken eggs to make certain proteins, and they tried it, and they can get chickens to make the proteins for lots and lots of other useful drugs. And this is something that's not done yet, but in the future will be done. And they could make drugs to treat cancer and other diseases that include a complex and expensive production and purification process involving mammal cell culture. So this is basically a cheaper way to grow a lot of these proteins for drugs that they need. It's a pretty cool thing. That's pretty cool. And you know what's also weird, though? You know what's also weird? I'm going to play this just a little bit. This could be the future president of the United States of America. This is Mr. Beto O'Rourke. Yeah, there we go. That's Beto O'Rourke and his band in sheep costumes. The story says video of Beto O'Rourke singing Blitzkrieg Bop in a sheep mask at once. That is not Blitzkrieg Bop. What are you talking about? What? Oh, whatever. That is not the Blitzkrieg Bop. Anyhow, his band, what was his band called? The Foss. Anyhow, the reason they were in sheep costumes was they were in New Zealand, and there's a New Zealand band that's popular called The Sheep. And they wanted to wear these costumes and, trick people. Yeah, they wear tight onesies and sheep masks. Yeah, the New Zealanders were not impressed. That was in 2003. Oh my gosh. It's so bad. It's so bad. Future President of America once sang a song out of tune. And this annoys me, because this is kind of an older punk idea. I like older punk music, like the Ramones. I like the Ramones an awful lot. And it was this kind of idea that punk, you don't need as much talent, and you can kind of play things a little off key, a little off tilter, and that's kind of what they're doing. But punk, the Ramones are talented, and these popular punk bands usually are pretty talented. It wasn't an excuse to be awful at playing, it was a musical choice. With Beto O'Rourke, all the things I've seen of him now, all these videos, he's just a bad artist. He can't sing in tune. He can't play a guitar worth anything, and his solos they're goodness gracious, they're off. He can play a guitar almost as well as I can, and I can't play a guitar. I can't. I really can't. I can play some things on the first 3-4 tabs, but that's it. I'm just terrible. And Beto O'Rourke is terrible as well. We all need to stop pretending he's good at this. It's just like with Obama, where they wanted to see how Obama was a sportsman. No, Obama was not a sportsman. Obama didn't care about sports. It just wasn't that thing. He was a nerdy political guy. He didn't like sports, and that's fine. But they wanted to keep pushing how he loved football and how he loved basketball. And they had these videos of him playing with basketball stars. Shaquille O'Neal, I think, was like, he's so good. It's just, it was painful. That's what this reminds me of. It's just so bad. So bad. Okay, so in a couple of podcast episodes back, I talked about that terrible thing they do to the cats where they kill them after they've tested the kitties for some parasite. Well, people, I guess this podcast wants to have traction with someone because, here's a story from the Blaze, lawmakers introduce a bill that would make animal cruelty a federal felony, mandate stiff prison sentences. Yes. Yeah, this is awesome. This is awesome. So this is from Representatives Ted Deutsch from, he's Democrat Florida, and Vernon Buchanan, Republican for Florida. They introduced the bipartisan legislation last week seeking to intensify punishment for those guilty of severe animal cruelty and exploitation. And this is awesome. I hope this thing passes. I hope this is like one of those unanimous passes. The bill addresses severe animal abuses, including crushing, burning, drowning, suffocating, and impaling animals, in addition to bestiality or the sexual exploitation of animals. Yes. Yes. See, this is one of those times where I'm a conservative, non-libertarian. I don't know. I'm libertarian on most issues. There are very few, it's easier to name the issues I'm not libertarian on. So, like, an issue that I'm not libertarian on, what would be? That's funny. I said that and I can't think of any good examples. That's, no. Let me think about this. No guns, no health care, no. Let me think. Abortion. I am not libertarian on abortion. That is something I'm against. This is another one. I think animal cruelty is awful, and I think we should have laws like this. I really do. I'm not animal cruelty free enough to, like, not eat meat, but I still believe strongly that we have to take care of the animals. I believe that God put man on earth to use the animals, but we also have to be responsible stewards of them. Steward is a term that you'll see a lot in Christianity and Judaism, where it's not like a master role. It's like, I've been put in charge of something. This is like your manager, and I have to take care of the things that have been put in my charge. And I have to treat them wisely. And we are asked to be stewards of the planet and stewards of animals. And so I like this law. I hope it passes. One last thing I'd like to talk about. They need this law in Colombia. I just watched an episode of The Grand Tour, which is like one of my favorite shows. I love that show so much. I'll talk about Grand Tour at the end of this podcast. I learned something about donkeys in Colombia. Holy flip, I did not believe that was real. It is. If you want to know what I'm talking about, watch the new Grand Tour special where they go to Colombia. It's really good. It's a two-parter. It's awesome. Watch it, but don't watch it with the kids. It's not kid safe. Maybe your older teenagers are okay. There's this part with, I can't even talk about it. It's so freaking messed up. It's so crazy. It's so crazy. I cannot believe it. I'm never going to Colombia. Those Colombians disgust me. And here's the last story for my fun, interesting news segment. China's latest cloned monkey experiment is an ethical mess. Yes, so this isn't the baby one. This is another ethical dilemma. So Chinese researchers created these gene-edited monkeys, and they edited them to have genetic diseases. And they did this using CRISPR, and they're able to make them quickly and cheaply. And the problem is this ethical or not? I mean, they took, this is barbaric what they did to one of these. They took off the gene that responsible for circadian rhythm. They just got rid of it. They turned it off. The monkeys that have this now have high anxiety and depression. They don't hardly sleep, and they have schizophrenia-like behaviors. Yeah. It's like, I don't know if that's okay. Maybe not. If it was done to a dog, I'd be one of the members of the mob. But a monkey I don't feel as bad about. But yeah, this is a big ethical question. Now, in truth, China does not care about ethics to animals. It's the West. It's people in the West that care about ethics to animals. China doesn't care. China does not care. Look up Chinese tiger zoo, like China Zoo Tiger, and you can watch these people throwing chickens at tigers, and they're just treated so terribly. But yeah, that's an ethical question we're all going to have to ask ourselves about. All right, well, I need to quickly go grab a drink. My throat's getting a little froggy, and then I'll come right back, and then we'll do a hard news segment, It's kind of heavy, though, guys. This one's not exactly Happy Warrior, so viewer listening, you've been warned. Be right back. What you just heard there is a terrifying sound. That moment will go down in history. That was a historical moment. What you just listened to is the New York State Senate. And the crowd there is in there. All the activists, all the New Yorkers that were in there, they're all clapping and cheering for the passage of, and this, I can't believe this is what's called, the Reproductive Health Act. The Reproductive Health Act is the most barbaric piece of legislation that has passed anywhere in the United States in more than 100 years. It is the most barbaric piece of legislation, perhaps in history, next to the evils of slavery. The Reproductive Health Act, in its incredible mercy, declares that every individual who becomes pregnant has the fundamental right to choose to carry the pregnancy to term, to give birth to a child, or to have an abortion. What this law did, it wiped out the 24-week limit and allows a woman to abort a child up till she gives birth. So once a woman is up to the last part of her third trimester, she's about to go in labor pain, she says, I don't really want the kid, doctor, kill it. And they can. And it isn't just the doctors that are allowed to do this. Anyone that is a licensed medical practitioner. As it says in the Act, quote, a healthcare practitioner licensed, certified, or authorized under Title 8 of the Education Law, aging within his or her lawful scope of practice, may perform an abortion. And this is the scary part. According to the practitioner's reasonable and good faith professional judgment based on the facts of the patient's case. And this can be based on absence of fetal viability, abortionists should protect the patient's life or health. Remember that part, life or health, because life or health, I say life and health to you, and you think, oh, life and health means that the woman's in danger to die. But no, life and health is this huge list of things. Quote from the law again, all factors, physical, emotional, psychological, familial, and the woman's age. Essentially, any woman at any time when she is pregnant, if she wants abortion, she can get it. This law is so barbaric that if Kermit Gosnell still had his practice today, he would not be charged with doing anything wrong. Instead of being called America's most notorious serial killer for the thousands of babies that he murdered, no one will be charged with that. If you have an abortion and the baby survives and the doctor doesn't save the baby, or they kill the baby, no one's charged. I do not have other word for it, but this is barbarism. This is barbaric. This is the policy that China and North Korea have. Now in China, it's not on the books, but they do this. They force women to have abortions all the time in China. And North Korea, it is official policy, but nowhere in Europe is it like this. The United States just became, and New York in the United States became the world leader in euthanasia and abortion. Congratulations, guys, you did it. You did it. As a man who has family he loves, as an uncle, as a brother, as a disabled man, as a human being, as a Christian. In every part of my soul, this makes me want to scream out. It is so disgusting and so wrong and so heinous. I can't believe they did this. Our nation is now at that point where it's that divided, where we've lost our moral compass so greatly that this thing passed. And it passed unanimously. Or close, I don't know, wasn't unanimously? It was pretty dang close to unanimous as far as I understand it. It's unbelievable. It is unfrickin' believable. It's like 2019 is this nightmare that I can't wake up out of. I'm shocked. I really am. I am shocked. You know what this also adds? I should know this. You will not be charged if you go to a pregnant woman and you beat them with a steel crowbar over and over again to abort the child. You will be charged with assault, but you will not be charged with killing that baby. That's how crazy this is. That's how crazy. And it's amazing to me in this world that we live in that we would allow late-term abortions at all. Look, I get that some people feel that before the baby has developed much, in that first 24-week period, that you feel that women should be able to make that choice. But this is something else. This is a whole nother galaxy. This is a galaxy's difference. This is a whole nother world. Because that baby could totally be viable outside the womb. And it wouldn't matter. They just can kill them. You want to know what happened? I don't want to sicken people because anti-abortion activists often screw things up when they show pictures or video or billboards of what an abortion actually looks like. But let me tell you this much: it's not a dentist appointment, as that video I tried to share with Robert. It's not. It's insane. Okay, so. Often when they do this, so I'll just give one example of how they do a late-term abortion. This is a quote from a guy that specializes in this. On day 1, the abortionist uses a large needle to inject a drug called digoxin. The drug will then be used to cause fatal cardiac arrest, killing the baby. The digoxin is injected to the baby's head, torso, and heart via a needle to the mother's abdomen. Quote, the baby will feel it, unquote. Quote, babies at this stage feel pain, unquote. The mother's cervix is then opened with sticks of seaweed called laminaria, so the woman can give birth to the dead baby. While the woman waits for the laminaria to light her cervix, she carries her dead baby inside of her for 2 to 3 days. On day 2, the abortion replaces the laminaria and may perform a second ultrasound to ensure the baby is dead. If the child is alive, he then administers another dose of digoxin. They say, and this is again, did I talk about the abortion pill, how they want to push abortion pills, and how much it messes up women? Because if it doesn't happen at the clinic, if you don't give birth to the baby at the clinic, they tell you to go do it on a toilet. No, I'm not making that up. That is the professional recommended advice. Says the Glivatino on this video. If the woman does not make it to the clinic, but the baby does not fully come out, a dilation evacuation procedure must be performed, meaning the abortionist will use clamps and forceps to dismember the baby piece by piece. Once the placenta and all the body parts have been removed, the abortion is complete. Now, I was a little dishonest. Dr. Lavatino is a specialist on abortion. He used to be an abortionist. He is no longer now. He is a pro-life advocate. He changed sides with the tragic death of his daughter, Heather. His daughter, Heather, was hit by a car, and he died in Dr. Lavatino's arms. And it changed his view on life forever. No longer was it medical waste. It was now a child. After this experience, Dr. Lavatino vowed to never perform an abortion again. I mean, this is just a horrific thing. It is. And this is one of the facts that Robert wouldn't believe when I share with him. But there are more black babies aborted in New York State and New York City than are born. And PolitiFact wanted to push back against this, but they admitted that it's true. This was back in 2015. This is finding out. So the question was, abortions by black women in New York City outpacing births. And they said the first place they went was a 2013 report, the most recent data available back then for New York. They said, according to the report, in 2013, black women accounted for 29,000 terminated pregnancies, almost 42% of all abortions in the city. That same year, black women gave birth to only 24,108 babies. Got that? So yes, it is true. More black babies are aborted in New York than are born. Now, as a Christian, as a religious man, I cannot look at this and not see the parallels to olden times in the scriptures. I quote Matthew chapter 2, verses 12 through 18. And being warned of God, this is God sending an angel to talk to Joseph to warn him and Mary to get baby Jesus and themselves out of Jerusalem, out of Israel. Not Jerusalem, out of Israel. And being warned of God in a dream that they should not return to Herod, they departed into their own country another way. And when they departed, behold, the angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream, saying, Arise, and take the young child and his mother, and flee into Egypt. And be thou there until I bring thee word, for Herod will seek the young child to destroy him. When he arose, he took the young child and his mother by night and departed into Egypt, and was there until the death of Herod, that might be fulfilled which was spoken of by the Lord, by the prophet, saying, Out of Egypt have I called my son. Then Herod, when he saw that he was mocked of the wise men, was exceeding wroth, and sent forth and slew all the children that were in Bethlehem, and all the coast thereof from 2 years old and under, according to the time which he had diligently inquired of the wise men. Then was fulfilled that which was spoken by Jeremy the prophet, saying, In Ramah was there a voice heard, lamentation and weeping and great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children, and would not be comforted, because they are not. At the same time, Governor Andrew Cuomo, who led on this and signed it, said that at the same time that the death penalty is, quote, is morally indefensible and has no place in the 21st century. That's right. He said the death penalty is morally indefensible, but this is okay with him. After this incredible piece of a monster of legislation passed, it wasn't enough just to pass this. No, salt in the wound, they had to push this all the way. They told multiple buildings, including the Freedom Tower in New York City, the site of the 9/11 terrorist attack. They ordered them to put the lights in pink. Now, I would say that's mockery, but no, this was supposed to be celebration. And this is just a quick little note. This is the most powerful thing I've read in a long while. It was by Alexander DeSantis, and it's from the article, The Indefensible Morality of Andrew Cuomo. You can't find National Review. But there's just a tiny little paragraph. Let me read this to you, and you take from it what you can. Just beside Freedom Tower, 2 pools mark the spot of the 9/11 terrorist attack. Around each of them are inscribed the names of every person murdered that day. And beside the names of 11 of those women, the carved stone says, and her unborn child. Beneath Cuomo's shrine to abortion on demand, the real story is written. These are human lives. The United States and the Western world at large is in the middle of a crisis of population. We are not having enough people to pick up the pace. I have a story that I was talking about in Norway and Finland. They are desperate for babies. They're putting the call up for babies. Japan has the same problem. The United States is far behind, but it is trying to catch up. Less people are having families. When the world is craving children, we are making it harder and harder for children to happen. And the United States wants to be a leader in euthanasia. Apparently, eugenics are cool again. We're going to catch up to another nation, the Netherlands, where 1/4 of all deaths in the Netherlands are by assisted suicide. Yes, that is another crazy fact. 1/4 of the deaths in the Netherlands are assisted suicide. These are cultures of death. These are not celebrations of life. These are not celebrations of the weird, of the broken. These are not celebrations of human endurance. These are not pull yourself up by your bootstraps. These are not about how the humanity overcomes the human condition. These are not the stories of the Down syndrome men and women who are in our nation and doing good and showing that life is worth living even in the hardest of circumstances. We are not taking the advice of Mother Teresa. When she heard about abortion, she said, quote, "Give me all the babies, give me all the babies." I know some very good men and women who want to be mothers and fathers. They are desperate to have a child. If you have someone in your life, if you are that person that has considering an abortion, and maybe even for the most horrific reasons, and I apologize that you're going through that. I really do. And I pray that you'll be comforted. But know that that child will be loved. There are people who want to love that child and raise it and help it grow and to become a full human being and the brightest and best person they possibly can be. Please do not fall for the lie of the culture of death. And if you're this is the sad thing is, if you're a political person, this is going to be a step in the right direction, but it's not going to be the end goal because they have to move on from here. People are too invested. Organizations are too put together and too much money coming through to stop at this abortion bill. They'll find something else. They might push assisted suicide farther and make it more and more okay. Oh, those chronic pain people have to kill themselves. They'll push it. This won't be the end. Slippery slope doesn't always apply, but it will apply here. And God help us. If you're one of those legislatures, if you're Andrew Cuomo, I do not, I can't say what a man's, what will happen to them in the next life. But I would be very God-fearing. I wouldn't stand under any steel poles. I apologize for getting so emotional. I think for so many reasons, this is just so sickening to me. So sickening. I don't think that, I hope other states don't follow. We can turn this boat around. This is murder. I don't care if it's legal or not. It's murder and morally reprehensible. And if this comes up in any of your states, any of your cities or towns, you push and fight back against this because we are facing that same plague that has plagued the United States somewhat and Europe, especially in the early 20th century. It's the culture of death, where death is an easy out, and that it's the right and charitable thing is to give death instead of providing life. And that is a lie. As a man who struggles with a great deal of pain, every day is horrific and hard, and I have to talk myself into keep going. Life is worth living. If I wasn't around, I wouldn't get to experience life with my niece Lena. I wouldn't get to hang out and watch dumb shows with my family and my mom. I wouldn't get to do this podcast. I know life can be hard. I understand. Life could be cruel and cold and awful, but it is worth living and it is worth having. Don't give in to the easy lie that death is the path to go, because life is worth living. All right, well, let's take a break. We'll do some fun news, and then I kind of want to talk to you guys about Venezuela. That's the positive news. If this was the hard news, and it is, Venezuela is the light. It's the positive news of hope, and I'm glad good stuff is going on there. All right, thank you for listening. This has been the Happy Warrior Podcast.
Gonna lay down my sword and shield down by the riverside, down by the riverside, down by the riverside. Gonna lay down my sword and shield down by the riverside. Study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. I'm gonna put on my long white robe down by the riverside, down by the riverside, down by the riverside. I'm gonna put on my long white robe down by the riverside and study war no more.
Hello again, everyone. Sorry, I just had to take a breather, get my emotions under control. Before we get going, I'd like to point out a GoFundMe page for David Ruiz E. David Ruiz E, or is it David Ruiz? Yeah, David Ruiz II, suffered a stroke from anoxia. He's kind of been comatose. He's neurologic storming with swelling. He's been declared brain dead, even though his response to his mom's and other loved ones' voices by twitching, raising his feet, toes, and twitching his legs, hand, and fingers. But the doctors now want to stop treating, feeding, hydrating, and medicating him. This is exactly like the Terry Schiavo case, where they just passive euthanasia. Well, it's not exactly. It's active euthanasia, where you just don't give them food at all and you kind of let them die off. It's awful. This is a GoFundMe for him. It's in the show notes, and I'll leave it at the top of the show notes. So this is an easy one you can go to. They're hoping to raise $15,000. So far, they have like $8,000. If you could help them out, that'd be great. The group that's behind this, that's supporting them, is the Terry Schiavo Life and Hope Network, which is run by Bobby Schindler. He was the brother of Terry Schiavo. It's crazy. I hate when they do that. I hate it. It's messed up. If you want to help a good cause, that is one to do, and I recommend you do it. So, okay, thank you. Moving on. Right now in France, they're having a huge scandal over horse meat. There's this episode of Bob's Burgers where Bob has to go undercover to stop this meat vendor, this meat seller, because his meat is from horses, and you say it's cow, it's beef, but it's really horse. Well, this actually happened in real life in Paris, and it's huge. And it was, what was it? It says 2101. That's very confusing. So January 21st, Europe puts the dates out of mix. So yeah, it was last week, and they think this goes back even to 2013. That's seen millions of meals withdrawn from supermarket shelves after they are found to contain horse instead of beef. It's crazy. Like thousands and thousands, millions of meals made. Things like frozen lasagna and meatballs actually are made out of horse meat. They think this could have been as much as the sale of 500 tons of horse meat. To 28 different companies to 13 European countries. It's crazy. It's crazy. That's so much horse meat. Oh. You know what's also sad about food? Another food-related thing. There will be no Sweetheart candies on the shelves this Valentine's. The company Sweethearts had some problem last year, and they had to declare bankruptcy, and I think someone bought them. Yeah, they got bought by Necco, but they haven't got everything all reordered. And so there will be no Spangler Sweethearts, the conversation hearts with love me, hug me, kiss me, bite me. Eat me. No, I don't know if it says bite me. But yeah, you won't be able to get those this year, which is very sad. Very sad. They say that this product often commands 80% of the U.S. market for candy hearts. Yeah, but you won't be able to get them this year. Moving on. This is a cool article. It's from the website Priceonomics. It's kind of like a life hack website. And some other stuff. And in this, they look at all those. So how much do you save, not only from restaurants, but those dine-in services or those like meal kit services? So they looked at, they went through the data. They looked at 86 popular dinner recipes. They figured out the average cost per serving of food from scratch, compared it to per serving of ordering it from restaurant or meal kit delivery service. They found it is 5 times more expensive to order delivery from a restaurant than to cook at home. But for a meal kit service, yes, it is cheaper than ordering out, but it's still 3 times more expensive than making it by yourself from home at scratch. I thought that was fascinating. So yeah, those meal kits are a racket. I hear they're pretty good though, but they are a racket. You should know, if one day I'm advertising you a meal kit and there's a code and you want to do that so I can have money, yes, do so. But until then, meal kits are rackets. Okay, that's just the truth of it. Here's another cool technological breakthrough that you guys will enjoy. This is from Defense One, and it's about veterans. But this could apply to everyone. It's fantastic. It's about how electric therapy is curing Navy SEALs of PTSD, and they think could remake brain science. It's really cool. It is really cool that they're using EEGs and MERTs, and they're using it to help people. When I was working on my bachelor's, I read a couple of books on the subject of ECT, which is electro-something therapy. Electroconvulsive therapy. There we go. Electroconvulsive therapy, and how it's the most effective treatment for depression that we have in our arsenal. But because in the 60s and 70s, all the pop culture went out against it, so people are afraid to use it. But it's actually the most effective treatment for depression. And if someone is suicidal and you need something to get them better faster, ECT is the way to go. Yes, there are side effects. It takes away like the last 48 hours of memories sometimes when you take it, but it's if you're about to commit suicide, having that is a lot better than killing yourself. And this is kind of out of that ECT, where we apply the electricity directly to the brain and we can heal things. And it's amazing. It really is. It's a cool article. Really cool article. the guy that was in this, the doctor that was in, he says, I think in the future there'll be discussion about whether this should be first-line management, what to do with the functional issues at play. There's a whole lot of science to do before we get there. And it's really cool. And they say that part of the science can go as far back as the 1743. And it goes, and they talk about ECT in here. It's just a neat article. It's in the outline. It's from Defense One. I'll read the title one more time for you guys. How Electric Therapy is Curing Navy SEALs of PTSD and Could Remake Brain Science. I recommend you guys read that. Good news also is that people with disabilities at the moment are coming into the workforce, and this is great. We're at a very unemployment. The economy hasn't been doing this well in unemployment numbers for 50, 60 years, something crazy like that. The Wall Street Journal says that unemployment rate, so the U.S. is currently 3.9, which is the lowest since 1969. Oh, that was close. And the monthly rate of unemployment for disabled persons, like myself, fell to nearly 5% between 2014 and 2018. And that is great. It is great to hear that disabled people are working, that there are more employers that are willing to work with them. They said a dearth of Social Security disability benefits granted to applicants has pushed disabled people to seek employment. Quote from the Wall Street Journal: a smaller share of people are getting on the program. That's causing people to not apply, instead to seek alternatives. So basically, part of this, and this is my guess, is part of it is one, employers maybe are being willing to be flexible. This is a big problem if you're a disabled person, is you might be willing to work, but because of your disability, you can't even promise what days you'll be able to come into work. You can't promise all the hours, or there's certain tasks that you can't do depending on what your disability is. And there are more employers that are willing to be flexible with this and work with you on it. But the other side is the Medicare, Medicaid, getting people on these things, if you're disabled, Social Security benefits is almost impossible right now, particularly in red states, but across the country. In fact, it's generally assumed that you will have to get to the federal judge, that you will have to go through several appeal processes and be denied most of them. Most people never get in on their first time applying for disability. I have been, since 2016, been applying for disability, and I've only had one time with a judge. I mean, it takes forever to go through this process, and it's humiliating and awful, and I could make a whole podcast about how awful it is trying to get on disability, but that's for another day. I'm just saying, I think it's also this problem is that disabled people are desperate, and so they're just doing whatever they can to survive. It is a slight positive that work is part of that, but I think it's a mix. I think because disability activism is very much on the left, and they feel government programs should solve everything. And I don't feel that way. I'm a libertarian disability activist, where I'm saying we need to allow people, individual people, and charities to help people who are disabled, and we need to encourage employers and colleges and schools to be flexible and to let these people work there, and get as many that can work to work, and because give people meaning in their lives. I think that's the goal. Giving people money and health care can be good, but it is not a solution for fixing the hole in their lives that disability often gives you. So I think that's very interesting and a good thing to see. My mom says, "Hey, you're so sad. You need to put in happy news." Well, there you go, Mom. That was for you. I did that for you, Mom. I hope you enjoyed the happy news. Well, let's move to just awesome possum news. What is going on in Venezuela has given me great hope for the future. We had the terrible story about New York and the Covington stuff showing how bad our press and populist system is right now. But we do have good news in the world, and that is Venezuela. Yes, the country that has forced people to eat all their zoo animals and pets. The country that has no medical personnel left because they all fled. The country that has tweens and teenagers selling their bodies so that they can get money to escape the hellhole that is the country Venezuela. The country that has an inflation rate of over 1 million%, where the solution by the government was to cut 5 zeros off the currency. So if you have they said, well, we're just going to do 2, but we decided we'd add 3 more. Yes, that country has hope, and the hope is in a guy named Guaido. Yes, Guaido, Juan Guaido. He's 35. That's really young, by the way, and he is claiming to be the rightful leader of Venezuela. Here's the thing: the dictator, President Maduro. There was a sham election last year. Guaido is in charge of the opposition party that controls the legislature. The legislature supported this, and he announced himself to be the rightful president of Venezuela. And not just like he'll be the interim president. So if Venezuela has election, he might not still be there. Okay. As soon as he announced it, the United States came out, President Trump came out, and President Trump, I give you a big high five. Even Slate said Trump needs to. Even Slate came out and said Trump did right on this. This could really end up bad, but he said Trump did all right on that. That was Slate, okay? Slate will hardly ever give Trump credit for anything. I mean, that's not a MAGA observance. That's just a normal person observation. It's very interesting. So here's some facts before we move forward on this. There were demonstrations against Maduro even right before he announced this and after this. And they said that thousands of people might have been killed during this. They said at least 20 Venezuelans we know of have died in violence, and there will be more. They were shot by security forces or pro-government groups. Initially, the military is on Maduro's side. Some of them are starting to sway to Guaido, like the top foreign envoy announced that he was with Guaido. So this is slowly changing. In fact, one of the news stories I was putting in my outline, 1 second before I clicked the refresh button, was the military split on support for Maduro and Guaido, and the next it was a completely different headline. I thought it was pretty funny. Yep, yeah, then it became Maduro boxed in as Guaido consolidates position in Venezuela. It was a funny fix. Yeah, so basically, if for this to work, and now most of Europe has come out in support. Israel's come in support. Many South Americans have come out in support. For Guaido. So, and that's awesome. And this is led by the U.S. in this effort. So, high five, United States. I think this is fantastic. There are countries that are warning not to intervene, Russia and China in particular. They have two reasons. Number one, Russia and China have invested a heck of a lot of economic and political collateral into Venezuela. Russia, remember, is going to build a military base on a Venezuelan island in the Caribbean, and that's where they're going to put their hypersonic nuclear missiles. Russia does not want Venezuela to change governments because this government loves Russia. China also has invested a ton of capital into Venezuela as well, a lot of infrastructure, and their social credit system has been exported to Venezuela. It's something they're implementing right now, all that evil 1984 tech. There's another reason, though, that Venezuela worries China and Russia is because Venezuela shows, if this works, shows that countries that don't take good care of their people, if they don't take care of their people, they could be overthrown. And look at this. Look at this. So in Russia, right now, Putin is the least popular that he's ever been. He is the most unpopular he's ever been. This is from Reuters. Trust in Russia's Putin falls to 13-year low. 13-year low. The trust in Putin is at 33.4%. And that was the Public Research Center. And it's lower than that because, remember, when they have to ask Russians this, they have to be careful. Russians all of them can't tell the truth. So it's lower than that, guys. And, there are other countries, like Mexico did not come out and support Guaido. And why not? Well, Mexico is also teetering. Remember, they're basically being run by the cartel. They just had a new president that kind of wants to fight back, and he wants to work with the United States to fight. And awesome for that. They're not going to come out in support of Venezuela because this sends the message that, well, maybe Mexico can be toppled. And Mexico has a long history of toppling governments. I mean, you can look up the whole thing about Napoleon's, that situation. Very interesting. So, yeah, these are countries that have a vested interest in not coming out in support of Guaido. This is awesome. Now, it may take time for Guaido to come into power, and then we'll have to have real elections, and this will be years' effort to heal Venezuela, decades even, to get Venezuela where it used to be. But think about this, guys. Venezuela used to be the social model. There is a Park and Rec episode dedicated to how awesome Venezuela is. When the episode was made, Venezuela was the second most prosperous country in the Western Hemisphere. We were number one. Venezuela was number two. It is now at the bottom of that list. Think about this. This is how bad it is. Article from Medical Press: polio makes comeback in Venezuela after decades. And because there's no vaccination, there's no medical care at all, the polio virus is popping up and kids are falling ill with it. Yes. It's amazing. It's amazing what's happening in Venezuela. I am so, I am very happy that there might be hope in Venezuela. I hope Guaido doesn't become, he's like, we traded one dictator and we got another one. The old Rolling Stone quote, old, new boss, same as the old boss. I hope that's not true. This is, by the way, a feather in the hat of Trump, and it's a feather in the hat of John Bolton. He is the one that pushed for this. He has been pushing for Venezuela, Nicaragua, Cuba, and others to fight for freedom. Bolton, if this works, feather in his cap, this goes to Bolton, this goes to Trump. If this works, I might even say that one of those guys needs a Nobel Peace Prize, because this is incredible. And what is amazing to me is that God has given us this lesson. Maybe that's too religious, okay? But let's take off the God hat then. Let's look at it just as agnostics. We have this perfect example in South America of what socialism leads to, what socialism causes, what high taxation and central planning does to an economy and to a people. This is just a repeat of every other dictatorship based on communism and socialism before it. And we here in the United States are morons. We are not learning from it. We are not applying these lessons. Bill de Blasio, the mayor of New York, here's what he said. It says, it's time for this country to recognize there's plenty of money in the world. There's plenty of money in this nation. It's just in the wrong hands. The 1% may have gamed the system all these years, but it doesn't have to be that way. And right now, cities big and small are showing the whole nation this kind of country we can have when we do things the other way around. Yep. And, he's just a tiny, tiny fraction. He's just a tiny fraction of this move that we need to tax more, and we need more central planning. We need more government control. We need to help people. We need to free people. And, of course, today, unfortunately, and I'm going to cover her now. I don't always, because I don't want to meme her into the presidency, as Tim Pool says. But Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is the face of this movement, as she is the representative of this populist feel that the Democrats and progressives have in this country. I'm going to play a couple of clips, and this is astounding. And these clips I'm going to share with you sum up exactly what is wrong with that ugly populism I talked about in my first segment about the Covington Catholic kids scandal. Listen up. Clip 1 is AOC on Martin Luther King Day talking to Ta-Nehisi Coates about all kinds of issues. This here is her talking about climate change.
Millennials and people and Gen Z and all these folks that come after us are looking up, and we're like, the world is going to end in 12 years if we don't address climate change. And your biggest issue is how are we going to pay for it? And this is the war. This is our World War II, and I think for younger people, we're looking at this and we're like, how are we saying let's take it easy when 3,000 Americans died last year? How are we saying let's take it easy when the nth person has just died from our cruel and unjust criminal justice system? How are we saying take it easy when the America that we're living in today is so dystopian, with people sleeping in their cars so that they can work a second job without health care, and we're told to settle down? It's a fundamental separation between, that fierce urgency of now, the why we can't wait that King spoke of. That at some point these chronic realities do reach a breaking point.
Now, I could go on and on about how much of what she said, most of what she said there, was factually inaccurate. The Washington Post, there's a funny Twitter fight between her and the fact checker for the Washington Post about how what you said basically was junk. All that was lies. And she's like, ugh, it's painful. But, she does have a lot of power. You should think about this. 74% of Democrats would consider voting for her if she were old enough to run for president. That's from Axios. That's insane. I say that. I've said that a lot today. Maybe that's the name of this episode. Yeah. 74%. And she speaks to this idea where the narrative is more important than facts. She doesn't really care about facts. In fact, one of the things that gives her power is that she ignores facts, and she just kind of spits the general feeling of her base. And it works, and guess who else did this, by the way? A certain president, a certain 45th president of the United States did this exact thing. And you could say that hasn't led to all the greatest outcomes. And who knows where this could lead. And, I talk about how awful Venezuela is, but when we have leaders like AOC spouting this stuff that I'm about to share with you, it really makes you wonder about the future. Okay, so this next clip is her on 60 Minutes.
One of the criticisms of you is that your math is fuzzy. The Washington Post recently awarded you 4 Pinocchios for misstating some statistics about Pentagon spending.
If people want to really blow up one figure here or one word there, I would argue that they're missing the forest for the trees. I think that there's a lot of people more concerned about being precisely, factually, and semantically correct than about being morally right.
But being factually correct is important.
It's absolutely important. And whenever I make a mistake, I say, okay, this was clumsy. And then I restate what my point was. But it's not the same thing as the president lying about immigrants. It's not the same thing at all.
Now, because I tried to do healthy and respectable journalistic work, I gave you that full clip. I didn't just end it here where her thing. But to be honest, she does not correct herself. And it is the same thing or worse what the president says about immigrants or when the president stretches the truth, okay? And you heard that part? That's another historical quote. That one's going to go in the history books where she says, it's more important, they want it to be more important about being factually correct than morally right. And that is our problem in a nutshell. That's the problem with everything today, where it's more important about being morally right instead of factually accurate. And I could apply that, by the way, to popular media, where it's more important about being morally right instead of, a good story or talented writing or you could apply it to anything, right? And that's the attitude of 2019. That's the attitude of this era. And that she sums it up in a nutshell. There's one more clip I think I want to do, and this is not AOC. This is out of California, and it is hilarious. It's hard to believe this is an actual thing. A state senator announces the banning of he/she pronouns during hearings. They're now so on the Senate Judiciary Committee. You're just not allowed to put out documents or talk using non-gender neutral designations. And this is State Senator Jackson, when she announced it. Oh, it's hilarious. You'll love this. This is hard to believe.
My grammar teacher's long gone, and I won't be hearing from her. And if any of you... From them, exactly. From they. But for any of you who may hear from an old grammar teacher, blame it on me.
Okay, I enjoyed it. That was a little bit of Schadenfreude right there. That was funny. Okay, one stupid news article, and then I'm going to go to Peter's Grummet. Something that makes me really grumpy. So here's one thing that makes me grumpy, but it's not my grumpy thing. Pop songs have become angrier and sadder. This is out of a study where scientists analyzed lyrics from 6,000 best-selling songs from the 1950s to 2016. This was out by the Lawrence Technical University in Michigan. All these songs came from the U.S. Billboard Hot 100. They say, according to their study, the mid-50s were the happiest, and now is the saddest and angriest. Yeah, and I did not know that. I have to look at pop music because I'm not really into today's pop music, but I'm just going to have to take it on their word because I do not listen to today's pop music. It's just not something I'm into. But maybe you listening, maybe maybe you agree. But you know what really gets my grommet? All the SJW political pandering that is in my TV shows these days. And I'm getting tired of it. Dang it. Star Trek Discovery just had its second season, and the first season was horrible. I love Star Trek. I watched Next Gen a couple of years back with my brother John, and we just kind of binged all the 90s Star Trek. It was great. It was so much fun. I got it. I didn't used to be a Trekkie, and now I get it. I get the appeal of Star Trek. Well, Star Trek Discovery, the season 1 was so bad. There's this great article on Quillette called, "What is this thing you call social justice?" ? And this is about season 1, how bad season 1 was. They said former showrunner Aaron Harberts was on a press tour and was telling people about season 1 of Discovery that was going to take, quote, a take on the Trump presidency through its storytelling. The allegory is that we really started working on the show in earnest around the time the election was happening. The Klingons are going to help us really look at certain sides of ourselves and our country. Isolation is a big theme. Racial purity is a big theme. Incidentally, one of the showrunners was later accused of verbal violence and subsequently let go after the first season was completed. And I've heard this from Star Trek fans. They really don't like it. Like, the main character is a black chick, by Sonequa Martin Green from Walking Dead. Her name is Michael, for some reason. She has a blonde lesbian girlfriend. She has really no redeeming qualities. She's always complaining, and she's always outdoing and out-surviving all the traditionally male white characters for some reason. It's really in your face about it. To port on this, the supporting casts are all chosen out of diversity. So it's like a diversity quota is what the team is made out of. There's a few characters that are good. In this article, they say, like, we like Saru, we like Klepian and Cadet Tilly. I don't know if I do, but, it was awful because the Klingons, they changed the whole makeup scheme. They even changed their culture. They were a really rich character in Star Trek canon before this show, and now they're just deplorable versions of Make America Great Again. In fact, their rallying cry is Remain Klingon. Yeah. This was so bad that CBS actually came out with a statement that said that we deny any direct connection between Make America Great Again and Discovery. Yeah, no, it's true. Really, it's true. And season 2, I guess, is just as bad or heading that way. What they've done to Spock is a travesty. I just hate this. And, this is just like what they did with Star Wars. And one more show, Steven Universe. Now, Steven Universe, I have a soft spot for until, season 4. And about the same time when the election was happening, and this was made before the election, but they tripled down on the SJW themes. Like, they're always women, and gender is kind of a question sometimes, but they're rocks. And I can handle art that takes a different political and philosophical view of my own because it's art. You view it, you can ingest it, you can ponder on it, but you don't have to agree with it. But, I mean, they've gone just full crazy. I mean, they just had an episode where they quadruple down on the character of Steven, how he is changed. Quote from the song, "I don't need you to respect me, I respect me. I don't need you to love me, I love me. But I want you to know me if you change your mind." And the whole episode is on this idea that he's a trans character. I used to be a woman, but now I am a man. And it's painful. It's painful. Oh, it is really painful. And this is kind of one of the shows that leads on the way. And I don't understand why artists do this, especially for pop culture. Like, aren't you trying to grow your audience? Why are you tripling down on the political pandering? Okay, you made a small subset of the U.S. population very happy. But for the rest of us, we don't get it. And for many of us who want to enjoy entertainment, just for the sake of entertainment and share it with our family and loved ones and friends, you do this crap. And we just can't be part of it. And I want to stick by the show. I really actually, for the most part, until about season 4, I loved Steven Universe. I would say it was one of the best shows on television, one of the best shows in animation. Not necessarily because of the way it was animated, but just as a product. And I can't say that anymore. And that hurts. I'm sorry. It's sad. Everything has become political, and I'm sick of it. In this next episode, I want to do an audio essay about Grand Tour and the new Ghostbusters reboot and how people are learning from this, and they're going back to what works and what had a big audience, and I like that. So, but if you watch Steven Universe, heads up, it's a bit crazy. It's pretty divisive love online. It's sad. I'm sad for it. And, skip Star Trek Discovery, I think. Skip The Last Jedi. If someone's going to be super SJW and destroy something that you loved, then I don't think you should have to support it. Don't spend your money on it. Okay. Well, that is it today for this episode of the Happy Warrior Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Please follow me on Facebook, follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram, check me out on YouTube, and most important of all, leave us a positive review on iTunes. And keep me in your prayers. I'm going to go this coming week to a pain specialist, and we are really hoping it'll turn out well, because this health stuff that I've gone through is hellish. If I could really get a solid pain treatment and regimen in my life, that would open me up to do so much more. I could do more podcasting, more videos, more articles, more content for you to digest and enjoy. Last thing, thank you to producer Robert Mehling for helping me out and being my partner on this podcast. Thank you to the U.S. troops, past and present, living and dead, for your sacrifice and shedding of blood for our liberties here in the United States of America. I just finished watching The Pacific and Band of Brothers, and oh man, do they make you feel patriotic, and you really gain an appreciation for the huge sacrifice that men and women have made in support of our freedom. So thank you so much for that. Please keep the country in your prayers. Don't give up hope. There's still hope, guys. We can turn this ship around. We can fix things. So keep on fighting, keep on listening, and have a great night. This is the Happy Warrior Podcast with your host, Happy Warrior Pete.
Thank you for listening. The Happy Warrior Podcast, hosted by Peter Vaughn Pischke, produced by Robert Mehling, a production of the Sioux Empire Podcast Network. Learn more at happy-warrior.net.
A production of the SiouxEmpire.com.